Jack the Giant Killer, from Joseph Jacobs' English Fairy Tales. Chapter 1. Jack and the Giant Cormoran. In the reign of King Arthur, near the Land's End of England, in the county of Cornwall, there lived a wealthy farmer who had an only son called Jack. He was brisk and of a ready, lively wit, so that whatever he could not perform by strength, he accomplished by wit and policy. Never was any person heard of that could worst him. Nay, the very learned he many times baffled by his cunning and sharp inventions. In those days the Mount of Cornwall was kept by a huge and monstrous giant of 27 feet high and 3 yards in compass, of a grim countenance, to the terror of all the neighboring towns. His habitation was in a cave in the midst of the mount, whither he would frequently retire at night, but at the break of day he would go forth and make spoil of the country. Not only sheep and oxen, but likewise men, women, and children became his prey, for he would lie at the foot of the mountain, and if he saw anyone pass by, though at a great distance, he would stride after them, and if once he laid hold of them, they were sure to become his victims. The giant had done this for many years, so that all Cornwall was in dread of him. One day Jack, happening to be present at the town hall when the magistrates were sitting in council about the giant, he asked them what reward they would give to any person who would destroy him. To which they answered, "He shall have all the giant's treasure in recompense." Quoth Jack, "Then let me undertake it." So he got a horn shovel and pickaxe, and went over to the mount in the beginning of a dark winter's evening, where he fell to work, and before morning had dug a pit 22 feet deep and broad enough for 2 men to walk abreast. He covered it over with sticks and straw, and then strewed a little loose mold upon it, so that it appeared like the plain ground. This done, he placed himself out of sight on the opposite side of the pit. Early in the morning the giant came out of his cave, roaring like thunder, and treading the ground under him that it shook again. Jack then blew his horn, so that the giant cried out, "Thou villain, where art thou?" "I'll find thee," said Jack. And thus saying he ran towards the pit in great fury, and there being a thin covering fell into it, and made the very foundation of the mount to shake. "O Jack," said he, "thou hast trepanned me." Have I so?" quoth Jack, and with that he struck him a blow with his pickaxe on the crown of his head, and killed him on the spot. Jack then returned home to cheer his friends with the news. When the magistrates heard thereof, they made a declaration he should henceforth be termed Jack the Giant Killer, and in honor thereof they presented him with a sword and a belt, on which was written in letters of gold, "Here's the valiant Cornishman who slew the giant Cormoran." Chapter 2. Jack and the Giant Blunderbore. Jack was now the hero of the country, and his fame rung through the whole kingdom. Having killed the giant Cormoran, he determined to travel into Wales, and there, knowing that the country was infested with giants, he was willing, if possible, to destroy them all. But he had not travelled far before he entered a thick wood, where he heard the cries of a woman in distress. Jack, following the sound, soon came to a huge giant, dragging a beautiful lady along by her hair, and, as she was unwilling to go with him, he beat her until the cries brought Jack to her rescue. Jack, in sight of the giant, drew his sword, and running furiously at him, cut off one of his legs, at which the giant fell down. Jack then cut off the other, and so put an end to him. Then Jack gave the lady her liberty, and she returned to her father's house, from whence she had been taken. Jack then continued his journey and went over a high mountain, and coming to a large and spacious cave, he knocked with a hammer at the door, when there came forth a monstrous giant with 2 heads. He spoke to Jack very civilly, for he was a Welsh giant, and invited him in. Jack agreed, for he knew his strength, and never feared being destroyed by any giant whatever. When he was in the cave, the giant made Jack welcome, and prepared a large room with a bed in it for him, and the next morning he would show him wonders. Jack lay very quietly till midnight, when hearing a noise he arose, and, Looking through a crevice in the door, he saw the giant bringing a great block and chain with which he intended to secure him. "Oh," said Jack, "are these your tricks upon travellers? But I hope to be even with you." Then, taking the bedclothes and quilt, he bundled them up together and put them in the bed in his stead. And in the dark, he crept to another part of the room. At the dead hour of the night, the giant came with his club and struck several heavy blows on the bed in the very place where Jack had laid the quilt, and then went away thinking he had broken every bone in his body. In the morning, Jack laughed in his sleeve when the giant said, "How have you rested? Did you see anything last night?" "No," quoth Jack, "nothing but a rat, which gave me 2 or 3 slaps with her tail." Soon after, the giant took Jack to breakfast and gave him a bowl of hasty pudding. Jack, being loath to let him know he could not eat it, got a large leathern bag, and slipping it privately into his bosom, put the hasty pudding into it. When breakfast was over, he told the giant he would show him a trick. So, taking a knife, he ripped open the bag, and all the hasty pudding tumbled out upon the ground. "Odd splutter her nails," cried the giant. "Her can do that trick herself." And taking the knife, he ripped open his belly and fell down dead. Chapter 3. Jack and the Magical Treasures. Jack travelled onwards, and by chance came to another large cave, over the mouth of which hung a great stone. Jack knocked at the door, when another giant with 2 heads came forth. Jack said he was a traveller and lost his way, on which the giant invited him in. Jack told him he was a very strong man and that he could do wonderful feats. "Why," said the giant, "can you carry that great bar of iron on your back?" Jack answered, "I will try." Then the giant laid it on his back, but Jack soon dropped it and said, "Faith, I cannot carry it, but I can do what you cannot do." "What is that?" said the giant. "Why," quoth Jack, "I can cut off my head and put it on again." "Done," said the giant, "that's a thing I cannot do." Jack took a stick, and putting it into a bag, cut the bag instead of his head, and out tumbled the stick. The giant thought it was his head indeed. Then Jack took the stick and put it into the bag again, and by tying it up, seemed to fasten on his head once more. "Odd splutter her nails," cried the giant. "Her can do that well. Her head would not stick on again if her were to try." Jack killed this giant also, and searching the cave found in it 3 great treasures: a coat of darkness which made the wearer invisible, a cap of knowledge which gave the wearer understanding of all things, a sword of sharpness which would cut through anything in the world, and shoes of swiftness which allowed the wearer to run wherever he pleased. These Jack took with him, resolving to make good use of them when occasion should serve. Chapter 4. Jack and the 2-headed Giant of Wales. Jack, having got the magical coat, cap, sword and shoes, travelled far and wide, doing many wonderful things. At length he heard that a monstrous 2-headed giant in Wales had imprisoned a noble knight's daughter. This giant kept many captives in his dungeon and fed upon their flesh. Jack, putting on his invisible coat, went straight to the giant's castle. There he heard the giant say, with a voice like thunder, "Fee, fee, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Ah," said Jack softly to himself, "you are none of that sort yet. I'll prove a match for you." With his cap of knowledge, Jack knew how to act. He slipped into the castle hall and saw the giant sitting with a great bowl of human broth before him. Jack drew his sword of sharpness and, at one blow, cut off both the monster's heads. He then went to the dungeon and set free the lady and the captives. They all wept with joy and thanked Jack for their deliverance. The lady was the Duke of Cornwall's daughter. She invited Jack with her to her father's court, and there he was received with honor and magnificence. Chapter 5. Jack and the Enchanter. Jack's fame was now so great that he was invited to King Arthur's court, where he became one of the knights of the Round Table. Now at this time, there lived in the west of England an old enchanter, who used to lure travellers into his castle, where they were caught in his snares, and many had been so destroyed. Jack resolved to put an end to this wicked sorcerer, so he put on his invisible coat and went straight to the castle. In the hall he saw tables spread with dainty food and drink, and numbers of knights and ladies, who seemed to be welcoming him. But Jack knew they were only shadows caused by the enchanter's magic. He struck boldly with his sword of sharpness, and at one blow cut the enchanter in two. The shadows vanished, and all the captives whom the enchanter had held by his wicked arts were set free. Among them was a beautiful princess, whom Jack brought to King Arthur's court. The king, for joy at her deliverance, gave her in marriage to Jack, who was henceforth the greatest favourite at the court, and lived long in joy and happiness with his lady.